When you think of war, you might picture epic battles and grand causes, but history is also full of the profoundly silly. Sometimes nations have gone to war over a stolen bucket, a pig, or even a severed ear. Today, we're diving into 10 of the most absurd, hilarious conflicts ever officially declared. These are real wars, but fought over things that seem utterly preposterous. So, grab your helmet. Common sense won't help you here. Kicking off our list at number 10 is a conflict that pits man against, a very large flightless bird. Welcome to the Great Emu War of 1932. After World War I, the Australian government settled many veterans in the marginal farming lands of Western Australia. These new farmers soon discovered a formidable foe, not from a neighboring country, but from the native fauna. A horde of some 20,000 emus, driven by drought, descended upon their wheat fields, trampling crops and tearing down fences with the casual indifference only a 6-foot-tall bird can muster. The farmers, themselves the battle-hardened veterans, pleaded for help. The government's response was, to put it mildly, unconventional. Instead of agricultural aid, they dispatched the military. Yes, the Royal Australian Artillery, led by Major G.P.W. Meredith, was deployed with 2 Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. The mission? To wage war on the emu population. On paper, it seemed like a surefire victory. I mean, it's trained soldiers with machine guns versus birds. From a war against birds, we travel back to 14th century Italy for a conflict sparked by a piece of household equipment. At number 9, we have the War of the Oaken Bucket. This wasn't just any squabble, it was a flashpoint in the long-running rivalry between the city-states of Modena and Bologna. For centuries, these neighbors were on opposite sides of a major political divide. Modena was Ghibelline, supporting the Holy Roman Emperor, while Bologna was Guelph, loyal to the Pope. Tensions were perpetually simmering, and all it took was one small, almost comical incident to make them boil over. The story goes that in 1325, a small group of Modenese soldiers snuck into the city of Bologna, and as a grand act of defiance, stole a wooden bucket from the city's main well. Now, was this bucket encrusted with jewels? Was it a holy relic? No, it was just a bucket, a plain, ordinary oaken bucket. But in the charged atmosphere of medieval Italian politics, this was an unforgivable insult. At number 8, the path to war is paved with croissants. In 1838, France invaded Mexico after a French pastry chef's shop was looted by Mexican officers, and his pleas for compensation were ignored. France seized the chance to demand huge payments, using the pastry incident as a symbol and an excuse for war. The Mexican government called the demands outrageous. At number 7, we have a war that nearly brought 2 of the world's great powers to blows over a piece of bacon. This is the story of the Pig War of 1859, a standoff between the United States and Great Britain. The conflict took place on San Juan Island, a piece of land nestled between Vancouver Island and the North American mainland. The problem was that the 1846 treaty setting the border between the US and British North America, what would become Canada, was ambiguous about which channel the border should follow, leaving the strategic San Juan Islands in dispute. Both nations claimed them. For a while, this wasn't a huge issue. A small number of American settlers and British employees of the Hudson's Bay Company lived there in a state of uneasy but mostly peaceful coexistence. That all changed on June 15th, 1859. An American farmer named Lyman Cutler went out to his garden and found a large black pig owned by a British Hudson's Bay Company employee named Charles Griffin, rooting around and eating his potatoes. This wasn't the first time. Fed up, Cutler shot and killed the pig. Cutler offered to pay Griffin $10 for the pig. Griffin, incensed, demanded $100. Number 6 is a war named after a body part, the War of Jenkins Ear. In 1731, Spanish officers boarded the British ship Rebecca and cut off Captain Jenkins' ear. Years later, Jenkins presented his ear to Parliament, sparking a 9-year war between Britain and Spain. At number 5, we have Asa Komborov, we have a conflict whose name is both literal and misleading. The football war, fought between El Salvador and Honduras in 1969, broke out after heated World Cup qualifiers, but football was just the spark. The real roots lay in land reform, immigration, and deep social tensions. The atmosphere was incredibly tense. Coming in at number 4 is a war that started because a dog couldn't read a map. In 1925, the relationship between Greece and Bulgaria was, to put it mildly, terrible. There were long-standing territorial disputes and animosity over the treatment of ethnic minorities following years of Balkan Wars and World War I. The border between the two nations was a heavily militarized and extremely tense place. Soldiers on both sides stared each other down from fortified posts, and any small incident had the potential to escalate dramatically. On October 19, 1925, that incident occurred. A Greek soldier stationed at a border post in the Demir Kapia Pass allegedly ran after his dog, which had strayed across the border into Bulgarian territory. It was a simple, thoughtless act, but when he crossed the unmarked frontier, Bulgarian sentries, seeing a Greek soldier on their soil, opened fire and killed him. The Greek soldiers at the post were outraged. A Greek captain and another soldier advanced under a white flag to arrange for the return of the body, but the Bulgarians, perhaps panicked or trigger-happy, shot them as well. This was the spark. The Toledo War was nearly bloodless, bizarre conflict between Ohio and the Michigan Territory over a strip of land neither really wanted. Bad maps sparked the dispute, with both sides claiming the valuable Toledo Strip. Governors Lucas and Mason refused to back down, raising militias and posturing, but the war ended with little violence, just a lot of political theater. Prepare yourself for our runner-up at number 2, a war so absurd it was completely forgotten by one of the belligerents for nearly a century. I present the war between the Spanish town of Lijar and the nation of France. The story begins in 1883. In Centro Spansien Kiriansien Compamkens, Alfonso XII made a trip to Paris. During his visit, he was insulted and jeered by Parisian crowds who were angry about Spain's perceived pro-German sympathies. When news of this insult to their king reached the tiny, remote Andalusian village of Lijar, population around 300, the townspeople were incensed. Their civic pride was wounded, their honor was at stake. The town council convened for an emergency session on October 14th, 1883. In a display of astonishing local patriotism, the mayor and the 300 citizens of Lijar officially declared war on the entire nation of France. They were, in their own words, gravely surprised by the insults against our king and felt compelled to act on them. They didn't have an army or a navy or really any means of prosecuting this war, but that was beside the point. A declaration was made, and as far as Lijar was concerned, they were at war. And now, for our number 1 most absurd war in history, a conflict fought over bird droppings. Ladies and gentlemen, the War of the Pacific, also known as the Great Guano War. In the mid-19th century, the desolate Atacama Desert, a coastal region shared by Bolivia, Chile, on in the Occidente, Peru, was considered worthless. But then scientists discovered that the massive centuries-old deposits of guano, that is the accumulated excrement of seabirds, and nitrates found there were incredibly valuable fertilizers and key components for explosives. Suddenly, this barren wasteland was a geopolitical hotspot. The borders in the desert were poorly defined, leading to a complex web of treaties, business concessions, and rising tensions. The main area of dispute was a slice of the Bolivian coastline rich in nitrates, which was being exploited by a joint Chilean-British company. According to an 1874 treaty, Bolivia agreed not to raise taxes on this company for 25 years. But in 1878, Bolivia, facing an economic crisis, imposed a new tax anyway. The company refused to pay, and the Bolivian government threatened to seize and auction off its assets, and this was the trigger. Chile, claiming Bolivia had violated the treaty, sent its military to occupy the Bolivian port city of Antofagasta to prevent the auction. So there you have it. Wars fought over pigs, pastries, buckets, and birds. It's easy to laugh at the absurdity, but beneath the surface, these wars reveal something deeper. Pride, resources, and old resentments often fueled the conflict. Objects were just the excuse. These stories remind us humanity is capable of both great logic and world-altering foolishness. If you enjoy exploring history's oddities, subscribe for more. 10 minutes. Story.